Good morning.
Hey, Dave. Good morning.
How are you doing?
Always pretty good. You?
Living the dream, my man. I'm Dave Wescott, CEO of TransBlue. This is Vince Ortiz, Vice President of Business Development at TransBlue. And today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, customer refunds.
Refunds.
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
This is the worst. Let's paint the picture. Let's give this scenario. This is what happens. Boom, we're going to jump right in here. You have a project and you've got it started and you're getting the ball rolling. We're going to give a couple different scenarios just for fun. But you're getting a project going and you tell the customer, hey, we're going to start the job in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it might be. We're just going to say 3 weeks for this. And about 2 weeks in, a week before you start the job, the client calls and says, hey, I've decided to cancel my project. I would like a full refund. Let's say the job is 100 grand and you collected a 50% down payment.
Yeah. No, it is a tough one, right? I mean, but at the same time, there's so much invested in time and material, possibly, that
Yeah.
you got to consider those aspects of it as well.
So what's your response if that customer asks you for that refund?
Wow, man. I think I try to kind of still maintain the business and see what's actually causing uh, that change of heart, I guess. Number one. And if it comes down to it, there's probably different language and different agreements and so forth. And if an agreement has language in it that it's you need to retain certain funds because of time invested, materials being ordered, those type of things. Those need to be considered as well. So there may not be 100% refund.
Totally. The first thing that I always like to look at is what's the value of the client.
Mm.
That's the first thing I like to look at. Because not all clients are created equal. Let's be honest. We can all sit around the table and we can all say every single client is going to get the exact same service. But we all know that that's not true, right? We all know that everybody has their top 25 or their five top customers or their customers, and they are doing whatever it takes to bend over backwards for those top customers, right?
Right.
We all, it's just the way that it goes. So I think the first thing that you want to do is you want to look at the value of the customer. That's really what we want to dive into. What is the value of this customer? What is the length that this customer and I have been working together for? How long have we been working together? And then what's my revenue from the customer? And then a myriad of different things that come to mind are, how much, what's the annual spend with the customer? Are they an easy customer to work with, right? We've got customers that are super challenging, that are just difficult every single step of the way. And you're like, gosh, you think about firing them 5 times a day.
Right.
And then you've got customers that you just love. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh, I love working with X. They are such a great customer. They treat me so good. Like you want to go above and beyond for them. So I think you're looking at those customers and then you're making that kind of that formulated decision, and you're saying, this customer is really important to my brand. I get it. It's $100,000 job. They made a 50% down deposit, but listen, the relationship is so much more important. I'm going to do X. Now,
Right.
in your mind, you are saying to yourself, hey, I might give a refund. But before we give a refund, we need a phone call. So if you're taking notes, the first step is phone call, right? Not an email, not a text message. You want to pick up the phone.
Good old
And
fashioned.
good old fashioned way, good old fashioned way. So we want to pick up the phone. Now, if you get a voicemail, we're going to follow up with a text. Hey, I just got your request for a refund. Give me a call so that we can discuss. I can't move forward without a conversation.
Right.
And then I follow that up with an email. The reason is I want to get them on the phone. I want to understand why. What happened? Are we changing a budget? Are we changing a scope of work? Did we cancel the project because the store's closing? Like what's going on? If you're doing residential work, did someone die? Did someone pass away? Like what's happening here? What's going on? And I think it's really important to identify the why are they canceling.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point. There's a difference between service, customer refunds, and product, right? Where there's restocking fees, or there's like Nordstrom's, right? You take back anything and that level. But we're talking about the level of customer service, and then also profitability, whether that's a long-term, like you're saying, the relationship, or there's additional business, obviously opportunities, that kind of thing that you consider. But I think it's important to distinguish, service and product, and it's a lot tougher, I think, in the service business. And what you're talking about is really being strategic about it.
Yeah, very strategic. We want to analyze every situation, right? Now, let's just say that, let's change the script, and let's just say that this is a standard residential customer. Not that all customers aren't created equal, because they are on some level. But one of the things that we look at with a customer is we have actually a score that we use, right? And one of the things we're asking the customer, is this a strategic account? It's one of the questions on every single job that we do. Is this a strategic account? If so, why? And if not, why? Now, you could argue that every account is a strategic account because you want a review, you want a reference, you want a referral, so on and so forth. But some jobs are going to be one job, and that's all you're ever going to do for that customer. Right? That's all you're ever going to do. And so we will also want to look at that. So if it's not a strategic account, then that's going to say we're going to be less likely to give a refund, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. It ties into what we do in our business is the really taking a look at all those aspects, right? The number of sites, the strategic aspect of it. Our goal is to develop those relationships and build those relationships long term, right? So that's an important process that we take, for sure.
Absolutely. So we're saying, is this a strategic client? Yes or no? Okay. Then the next thing that we're looking at is time invested after the sale. So like a really big project, you might have 20 or 30 hours into just getting ready for the project. I mean, this customer is saying they want to cancel a week before the job starts. So how many hours are we into it? Right? Now, if we're into it 20 hours, and just to cover the labor in our office, we've got to be at $65 an hour. We know that we're $1,300 in, which isn't a ton, but we're $1,300 in. Now, the next thing that we want to look at is the cost of acquisition for the client, because we've won this job, right? The average proposal takes anywhere from 5 to 8 revisions. Each one of those revisions takes roughly an hour. So if you just say, hey, we've got 7 revisions, that's 7 hours. But then you've got the hour on site, probably meeting with the client. You've got the drive time there, the hour back. You've got the original probably 2 hours creating the proposal. Mm-hmm. So now you're into this thing 15, 16 hours, not to mention the cost that you paid for lead, the marketing materials, the brochures, the fuel, everything that you have that went into that. So let's just say the cost of acquisition for the client was $2,500. Now, let's say that you've probably made a down payment to a subcontractor, or you may have purchased materials to get ready for the project, because a lot of materials we know have long lead items, LLIs, right? We got to manage our long lead items. So we make purchases as soon as we collect the down payment for materials. And so We can return those materials for sure, but we're going to get hit with what?
Restocking fee.
A restocking fee. And a restocking fee is typically 20%, right?
Yep.
And so if you think of the average project, the cost of materials are typically 40%. That's what we see. Labor is typically 60%, materials are typically 40%. That's just our benchmark internally. So now we know that $40,000 is about what the material costs are. Now, if we've procured these materials in advance for this job, and now we've got to go back and restock those at 20%, how much does that cost? That's $8,000. Right?
Yeah.
Lumber yards don't put lumber away for free. Brick pavers, they don't go back for free. Right?
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to hold on to those materials. And some materials are non-refundable, like railings and gates.
Customized.
And fences, right? Some that you can't return it because it's custom for the job. It can't be used elsewhere.
Right.
So if there's a non-returnable item, you got to budget that in, right? So now I got to go to Vince and say, Vince, Vince, I'm going to let you cancel. But here's what we're looking at. We're looking at $8,000. That's the material restocking fee. We're looking at $2,500 in the cost of acquisition. We're looking at $1,300 in time invested. So altogether, we've got $11,800 that we're looking at to cancel this project. That's kind of step one. What do you think about that, Vince? You've been a business owner. You've ran many businesses. You're from the Fortune 500 world. Is that fair? Is that obtuse? How would you feel?
No, I think that would be fair. You know, based on all the elements you're talking about. You know, there's you know, I mean, the level of service we're talking about and the strategic aspect, but ultimately it's making sure we're not losing money. You know, making sure that we're being profitable. In these cases, you know, I think it's expected that there's some kind of restocking aspect to it, or percentage of that it needs to get recouped. I mean, that's my feeling on the service side of it.
Absolutely. Now we've got one other thing that we didn't discuss, which is preparation time. You know, depending on where the job site is, maybe we've already purchased hotels.
Airfare, yep.
Maybe we've already purchased airfare.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention now what happens to our schedule backlog, right? Now there's an opening. So we've got to consider those things as well.
Right.
So you really, and then you have to have that conversation with the customer. So that's kind of that option. And then the real option, the real meat of this comes down to what's in your contract. Right?
Right.
What's the cancellation clause? So the cancellation clause for me is, hey, anybody can cancel the project within 3 days. No penalties, no issue, nothing. Cancel within 3 days. After that, you pay 10% plus all of these fees that we've discussed.
Yeah.
Right? So it's going to come out around 22% of the job.
Yeah.
If you want to cancel, because we're going to allow you to cancel, we're going to do that, but we've got to be made whole for the cancellation of the job after 3 days. You have 3 days, you can cancel it, no penalties, no issues. So that protects us. That's how we go to battle on the contract side.
You know, Dave, and that's something that you're seeing in other industries as well. I mean, you see it in the hotel industry.
Yep.
You know, last year I rented a houseboat. You know, and there was that in writing, right? The agreement was you have this time to cancel. Then as it progresses, when you get closer and closer to the event, you lose money.
Yeah. So it's pretty standard. You've dealt with it in the hotel. You've dealt with it in the boating industry. We see it all over the place. Because what do we got to do? We got to handle our business. Okay. Now, let's say that we just changed the scenario up a little bit. And now let's say that the job was supposed to start in 3 weeks. but it's been 5 weeks and you're 2 weeks behind. How do you address that with the client? What would you think, Vince? What would your reaction be if you called up and said, if I said, hey, Vince, I'm working with you here today, and I haven't heard anything from your guys, and we gave you a down payment 5 weeks ago, and you were supposed to start after 3 weeks, and it's been 5 weeks, and we haven't received any communication. I've lost trust that you can do the job.
Yeah. I think you kind of handle a lot of it the same way that we're talking about now. It's just, I think there's a little bit maybe more, if it's on us, a little bit more of a consideration and making some adjustments. Again, you're going through the same process, strategic client, the possibilities in the future, what really happened here. So it's kind of really kind of following the same process, but I think in the decision-making piece, there's more looking on us as opposed to the other scenario.
So I think for me, it comes down to controls, right? And it comes down to processes. So one of the things that I believe we want to do is we want to set the expectation on day one. And we have a job introduction email. So for every single project that we start, no matter what it is, no matter if it's $1,000 or $1 million, we have a job introduction email. And that goes out to the operations team, the accounting team, the senior operations team, and the client. And it lists out, these are the people who are going to run your project. Hi, meet so-and-so. This is their expertise. And then this is so-and-so from accounting. They're going to get you an invoice within a couple of days. 3 days is typically what it is. Your down payment is due on X. If the down payment does not arrive on X, the project is going to be delayed every day, right? Every single day that the down payment is delayed, right? Because, we can't get a down payment at the last minute, especially if we're doing a project that has fixed or custom items within it, right? So we need to make sure that we've covered that. So we're going to look at that. And we're going to make sure that that's there. And then we put this really specific language into there and we say, this timeline that we've given you is an approximation. Sometimes projects end quicker and sometimes projects run longer. And because of that, your project may be delayed 1 to 2 to 3 weeks based on the current project schedule. Your project is also dependent on weather conditions. So snow, sleet, ice, rain, hail, hurricanes, all of those things that may affect the timeline of your job. And so one of the things that we always do is we always go back to that, right? We always want to go back to, hey, did you get the introduction email? And we let you know this might be a little bit of a delay. Okay, cool. So actually, we're right on schedule. Now, there's a million things that can go wrong in there. There's a million what ifs. So talking to the what ifs, I think, are important, but it's the controls that we put in place. So we call them 2-a-days, right? We want to connect with our client twice a day.
Right.
So every day we want to send out an update email, even if we don't have anything to say, hey, we're working on your project, so on and so forth. Boom. That way they can't say there's no communication.
Right.
Right. We want to do that from email. And then so many things get lost in translation with text messages. We've all had employees that were there one day and then gone the next. And so if they've been text messaging with the client, you no longer have access to that data. So what do? We use the Clarity app because we use the Clarity phone system. And so when we do that, now we can log in, we can track those text messages, we can see what that communication looks like, and we make our phone calls to the Clarity app. So now we can see when that client was talked to. What we find is that 99% of the time there was some communication from a project manager indicating that there would be a delay.
Yeah.
It may not be. Oh, sorry, Vince, go ahead.
No, Dave, I think you bring a good point. Matter of fact, you say it all the time, and we talk about it all the time as a team, is the communication aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
The documentation.
Yeah.
Is so key in this process.
Yeah, and when we have that documentation, when we find that documentation, we know, hey, listen, no, we did let you know we were running a delay. We did let you know. Okay, all right, I see. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's what happens 99% of the time.
Right.
And if we did make a mistake, I think that's time for the owner or the senior manager to jump in and say, listen, I'm sorry that this happened, because all companies make mistakes. I take personal responsibility for this. I failed. Any failure of my company is a failure on me. And I failed to deliver. And because of that, I'm going to personally oversee your job. I can't give you a refund. You're past the refund time. We're into a contract. We've already procured this, this, and this. This is the actual start date. I'm not going to give you a refund. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be here. You've got my personal cell phone. You got my personal email. Contact me, reach out to me if there's any issue. Sometimes you or a member of your senior team has to step in and take ownership of that job. You may not want to, but sometimes that's what it requires to provide that peace of mind to the customer.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what the situation, we've got to be prepared to deliver an incredible experience.
You're right. Being able to turn those moments into a positive moment, right? I mean, that's part of that level of high standard of service to your clients.
Yep.
Being able to turn negative into positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we also want to look at other opportunities. Is there an opportunity to reschedule the job for a later date? If it's financial, is there an opportunity to put the job on a payment plan? Right?
Yeah.
So we want to look at those opportunities as well. If we do cancel the job, what is the job value and what is it worth? Maybe we can trade something. Maybe we can barter something. Maybe we can barter the trade of a review. Hey, if you leave me a review at these 3 or 4 places at a 5-star review, maybe I'll refund your job. I'll take it back. I'm not asking you to write anything that's not true. I'm just asking you to say, hey, my experience with X team was awesome. They took care of me. They took care of my requests. Boom.
Yeah.
Right. Ask for a review. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So we're looking at each situation and we're navigating it based on how we go to business. And my goal here is, listen, no refunds. That's always the goal. That's always the company line, is no refunds. But we are going to look at every single situation, every single issue. We're going to look at them and we're going to make the best decision, and a decision that aligns with our value of deliver an incredible experience. But what we're not going to do is get taken advantage of and mistreated and abused, because that's the other part of the line. Values have to align, right? Like we want it to be an incredible experience, but we're also, we can't eat it just because, something came up a week before the contract was about to start and we've got many, many thousands of dollars invested into the project.
Well, we've been known to walk away from business. That's part of the early, that's that whole strategic aspect of it. Is it going to end up being good business for us or not? Not
all business is good business.
There you go.
In the beginning, you want to take on every piece of business. You want to answer every call. You want to do everything for every customer. But what you find is that sometimes that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just not going to happen, right?
Especially if it's a bad position.
It can put us in a bad position. You're absolutely right. So, we want to be able to do things the right way. And then also, as we're looking at this, we want to make the right decision. I'll tell you a story. When I first started my business, I think it was like the second job I did 19 years ago. I got a call out of the newspaper because I was advertising in the newspaper. And I got a call and somebody was like, hey, can you remove this hedge for me? And it was a small boxwood hedge, or what seemed to be a small boxwood hedge in front of their home. And I was like, sure. So I gave them a bid. It was $546. And so they were like, okay, cool. And they paid me my down payment, whatever, $260, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I went out to the job and like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull these hedges out. And so I had this little S10 Chevy pickup truck. And so I had my tow chain hooked up to it, man. And I wrapped that tow chain around the back of the truck and wrapped it to the tow hitch. And I was going to pull these bad boys out. And I went in there and I wrapped that thing up and I gave that little Chevy S10, all the gusto that thing had, and it didn't move. And I backed up and tried to yank it, and it didn't move. These suckers were in there tight, man. They must have been 200 years old. I don't know. But they just wouldn't pull. I couldn't pull them out. And so the client came up to me and was like, yeah, I figured your bid was a little bit low. Most of the bids we got for this was around $4,000 or $5,000, but we decided we'd give it a crack.
Yeah.
And see if you guys could do this. And I learned right there, I didn't have the right equipment. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to get a backhoe or something to pull these out of here, and that's going to cost XXX. I was like, listen, I made a mistake on this job. I'm sorry. I can't execute it for you. Here's a full refund. And I left with my head in my hands, and I thought, gosh, don't buy Chevy.
Moral of the story.
Moral of the story, it just doesn't get, but like I should have thought a little better. Okay, I got to dig these out a little. This is my second job. Sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah.
And you think thousands and thousands of jobs later, but giving a refund for there, like I felt like that was the right thing to do, because I never want to take advantage of the client, even though I paid for the advertising, even though I met with the customer, even though I did the bid, even though they accepted the bid, even though I went out there and started the work, like I just couldn't perform it. So I think we always want to notice and do what's right? That's one of our core values, right? Notice and do what's right. So at the end of the day, like, how are we achieving that in our business? How are we living by our core values? And when we do have a situation where we've fallen short, we need to always make that right for the customer. And that was to your point. We need to look at our actions, our failures, our mistakes. If we have truly failed as a company, as an organization, even if we have a no refund policy, we need to do the right thing and refund the money.
Yeah.
Right? No penalties, no issues. And so that's why every single case when it comes to a refund is absolutely critical that you review the what happened and the why. And if you did end up giving a refund, you look at your team and you say, okay, what did we do better? For me, I drive Fords and I drive F-350s. So now I can pull anything out of the ground at pretty much any particular point. Here's another trick I learned. This is a true story just for fun. I was pulling out a hedge at another property like 15 years later. And this was a monstrous hedge. This thing was so ingrown into this area. And so what we did was, this was really kind of cool. We just called a tow truck. And we were like, because it was really accessible to the road, right?
Yeah.
And the tow truck has a cool little cherry picker on the side of it, hydraulic cherry picker. And so we called the tow truck and we were like, hey man, can you come out here and pull some bushes out? And they were like, what? Are you tripping? Pull some bushes out? And we were like, yeah, man, it's easy. It's kind of up on this rockery. It's a little bit high up. You can pull your truck right up to it. And I was like, how much? He said, it's $105 an hour. Okay, cool. He's like, I'm going to need a credit card right now. This sounds a little hokey. So, we pay him with the credit card, and he drives up in his tow truck and he takes his cherry picker and he, puts it right on top, wraps the cord around it. Boom, 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 boom. Pulled them all out in 30 minutes.
Within the hour.
Yeah, it was awesome, dude. I mean, it was incredible, right? And the thing had so much power. The tow truck had so much power. It was incredible. And what did we charge this time? We charged like $8,000 to remove the hedge.
Yeah.
So what you learn is that experience enables you to do the job quicker and more efficiently. And you learn, okay, what's going to help me get out of here? And you think outside of the box. Like using a tow truck to pull shrubs is like, who would think of that? That's a crazy idea. But what we know is we need power and leverage, right? So at the end of the day, when we're working with our customer, it doesn't matter if we can get the work done in 30 minutes or 10 hours or 12 hours or whatever we've got to do. We've got to be efficient. We've got to be smart. We've got to take care of our customers. Anyways, that's just a kind of a rabbit hole. Probably shouldn't have done that, but it was kind of fun to talk about how we learned from that. So the moral of the story is, when you're dealing with refunds, always think about, how do you protect your brand? Look at your brand first. How do I take care of my company? When you take care of my company, what are the results that happen? And then how do you deliver that incredible experience? And how do you own what went wrong? Vince, what do you think? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, Dave. No, I just map it out. You know, be proactive on your plan, and map it out. And you know, this happens, we do this. This happens, and just kind of have a default plan.
Very cool. So have your default plan, put it in place. Just as a recap for the call, understand the total account value of the client, right? Your ACV, get that dialed in. And then understand, have your strategy with the client, understand your materials, understand your cost of acquisition, understand your time invested. Make sure that you're covering those things. Have a great contract in place. Set the expectation with an introduction that talks about delays and how those things are handled and what they mean to the project. So they're handled upfront in advance. And then always look and see if you missed the ball. And if you missed the ball, take ownership and make it right for the client. I hope this was helpful. If you like this, give it a share, give it a like. Follow me on LinkedIn, David Wescott. Follow me on Facebook, David Wescott. Hit up Vince Ortiz on LinkedIn. Follow up with him on LinkedIn. Follow him on LinkedIn. Give us a like, give us a share. And if we can ever help with anything, or you'd like to chat about anything about your business, we're always here to share any tips, nuggets, or advice that we may have. Thank you very much for joining the entrepreneurial journey. We will see you back next week.
Bye.